I'm pregnant, so he's mine now. You should also leave the company you run with him. I had a feeling my sister had a thing for my husband. But I couldn't believe that he would choose her over me and betray me. Or so I thought. It turns out I didn't need to believe that at all. As her older sister, it seems I need to clear up her misunderstanding. Oh my dear sister, hope you're ready for the truth. Open your ears wide and keep your eyes peeled to face the truth. Welcome to the beginning of a fun and tumultuous story woven by sisters. Just kidding. My name is Kate. I made my debut with hay fever at the age of 40 last year. I used to love both spring and autumn, but now they've become wicked seasons filled with flying pollen. I've even come to hate going on a walk to see flowers. Back in my 20s, when I still loved cherry blossom, my husband Tom lost his job due to a recession. We searched for jobs together, but the economic downturn made vacancies scarce, and landing a job was difficult. So, with the mindset of if there's no company to hire us, let's create our own, Tom decided to start a business. I decided to work at the company to support him, and together with a few employees, we built it up. Thanks to our efforts, the business gradually took off, and we grew into a company with significant clients. And then, it was around that time that my younger sister, Sherry, started acting strange. It was during a year-end trip back home. Hi, Tom. Sherry clung to my husband. I was certainly surprised, but my husband was even more shocked, looking as if a pigeon had been shot with a pea shooter. After all, until now, Sherry seemed uninterested in my husband. She didn't interact with him more than necessary, and often shut herself in her room when we visited. I thought, well, it must be awkward having a brother-in-law. And left it at that. But suddenly, she closed the distance. What on earth is going on? Tom, I have some delicious ice cream. Let's eat it together later. Sherry wrapped her arm around my husband's. My husband looked confused, not knowing what to do. Reluctantly, I peeled my sister off my husband, to which she said, "Come on, it's a special reunion. What's wrong with us getting along?" No, it wasn't like this before, right? I couldn't help but exchange glances with my husband. Sherry puffed her cheeks in dissatisfaction and declared, "Well, it's okay, I'll get along with Tom during this New Year's." Why all of a sudden? I just don't get it. However, as Sherry declared, she stuck close to my husband, and to my surprise, he seemed pleased that his previously indifferent sister-in-law had warmed up to him. Well, it's better than having bad family relations. But as I was thinking this nonchalantly, Sherry began to make sudden visits to our house. Sherry. You were just here last week, go back to our parents' house. Come on. It's boring being a single woman every day, and when I come here, you and Tom will entertain me, right? Saying this with a chuckle, I do care for my sister and don't mind her visiting. But coming over 2 or 3 times a week is definitely abnormal. Moreover, every time she comes to our house, she sticks close to my husband, saying, "Tom, tell me about your work." It looks like she's trying to flatter him. I'm frustrated with myself for seeing my sister in such a light, and I'd prefer if she didn't come to our house anymore. Once, my sister asked me, "Hey, sis, what's it like having your husband as the boss?" Even though he's the boss, he's still my husband, and there's nothing special about it. When I honestly told her that, Sherry looked somewhat disappointed and said, "Big sis, you have such a wonderful husband and you don't even realize his value." Needless to say, I felt like I was being looked down upon by the way she spoke. Or perhaps, that was indeed the case. On the day she made this remark, for some reason, Sherry pestered my husband to give her his contact information, and she managed to get his phone number. Starting to see my sister as aiming for my husband, I panicked and raised my voice without thinking. "Why do you need to exchange contact information with Tom? You two don't need to communicate." Even my husband tried to calm me down, saying, "Relax." I was fuming, almost hissing like a cat in a fight. Sherry retorted, "Kate, you're like a psycho. We're family, so it should be fine to know each other's number. Indeed. It's not unusual for in-laws to exchange contact information. I have exchanged phone numbers with my husband's parents and sister as well. But, I couldn't help but think something has been odd about Sherry lately. Later, I found out that around this time, Sherry had undergone laser treatment to remove a mole on her face. Encouraged by the successful treatment, she started considering getting her eyelids and nose done, thinking about cosmetic surgery. However, Sherry's earnings were not enough to achieve her desired appearance. That's why she set her sights on my husband, the president. At the time, I didn't know any of this and just felt that something's odd about my sister, which seemed eerie. My husband said, "I can't just ignore your sister." Understanding his point, but it made me worry even more that maybe someday she will take my husband from me. Gradually, I started to lose confidence as a woman. Whether she knew of my anxiety or not, Sherry started showing up at the company to ambush my husband. She would wait for him to finish work, go home together, have dinner, and after spending some time close to him, she would return to our parents' house. Even my husband started to subtly suggest, "You should probably head back home early." But Sherry wouldn't listen. Watching this unfold, I began to wonder if maybe my husband wasn't entirely averse to the idea. A while later, my husband had to go on a business trip out of the prefecture for about 2 months to start a new venture with a client. He would occasionally return to check on the company but would immediately go back to the business trip location. As the days without seeing my husband continued, Sherry, who had been persistently waiting in front of the company, gradually stopped appearing. By then, knowing about Sherry's intentions for cosmetic surgery, I was convinced. I thought she is definitely after my husband. I hoped she would give up on him, but then one day, I saw Sherry after getting off work. "Sherry. Tom isn't here today." "No, it's not about him. I came to see you today, Kate." "Me?" "Yes. I am here because I am carrying your husband's child. You know what that means, right? I'm pregnant, so he's mine now. You should also leave the company you run with him. I'll take over everything, the position of lawful wife and the president's wife." "What do you mean?" "Exactly what I said. I haven't told him yet, but this is the ultrasound picture I got today." Stunned, Sherry handed me the ultrasound picture she apparently got from the obstetrician, clearly showing a fetus. Was I betrayed by my husband? No, but he's been on a business trip, he shouldn't have had the time. But then again, the business trip location is not that far from here. It might be possible for him to meet Sherry after work. Thinking about it, the idea of my husband and Sherry having an affair wasn't absolutely impossible. So that's the situation. I'm sure I'll be working at the company soon, so quickly hand in your resignation. You wouldn't want to see your cute little sister in distress, would you? Gracefully give up your position. Thank you. With a smile that dripped poison, Sherry said, "I need to take care of myself now that I'm pregnant. It's getting cold, so I'll head back now, see you." She then briskly walked away, leaving me behind to board a taxi she had waiting. There was no evidence of my husband's infidelity. But there was also no evidence to prove his innocence, and recently, his interactions with my sister were too frequent. Moreover, my sister herself claimed to be pregnant. Even if the ultrasound photo was fake, there seemed to be no reason for her to tell such an easily disprovable lie. Oh, I've been abandoned by my husband. It's time for a divorce. That night, I hardly slept. I thought closing my eyes would immerse me in happy memories, but surprisingly, trivial matters and memories of arguments came flooding back. Those memories, more poignant than the happy ones, made me think sarcastically. To be able to argue was a form of happiness. With that, I fell asleep. 2 days later, when my husband returned from his business trip, I handed him the divorce papers and my resignation letter, apologizing for bringing work home. "What's this?" he said, at a loss for words. "I heard about it. You and Sherry. You've been seeing each other, haven't you? I had no idea. And now that she's pregnant, I have no choice but to step aside. I laughed dryly, and my husband angrily responded. What are you talking about? Taken aback, I asked. Huh? In confusion. Explain what you mean. He demanded, clearly infuriated. I nervously recounted what my sister had told me. So that's why Sherry has been calling me so much these past few days. I've been mostly ignoring her calls unless it was something urgent. She probably wanted to tell me about the pregnancy. His face hardened as he spoke. Kate, we're calling Sherry over tomorrow to talk about this with everyone. Okay. So, we decided to take a day off work to meet with my sister for a discussion. We arrived a bit early at the restaurant with private rooms we had chosen for the meeting, and Sherry showed up on time. Tom, what up calling me out so suddenly, what's the matter? Kate is here too. Oh, is it about the divorce? You told Kate to divorce me and leave the company because you're pregnant? Yes, of course. I mean, it would be uncomfortable with her around if we're getting remarried, right? Don't joke with me. There's no way I'm divorcing Kate. What? You tricked me? So I was just a fling? My sister exploded in anger, glaring at both of us. Sigh. Listen, Sherry. When you supposedly got pregnant, I was out of the prefecture. Here's the proof. He then showed receipts from his business trip, including ones from restaurants and hotels, proving he had been living out of a hotel and attending evening receptions for nearly 2.5 months. Why? What does this mean? But we met, didn't we? Clearly confused, Sherry couldn't claim the receipts were fake. I hate to say this, Sherry. But could it be that you were meeting this guy? She stiffened as my husband silently handed her a photo. This is you, right? In the photo was a man who looked just like my husband. Or rather, exactly like him. No, look closely. There's a mole near his temple. I don't have that. He brushed his hair aside to show his temple. Sherry's face turned pale. If he's not you, then who is this person? To her question, my husband sighed deeply and began to speak reluctantly. He's my cousin. He's been disowned by our family because of his debts and goes around asking relatives for money, so he's someone to be wary of. He's caused me trouble multiple times because we look alike, even our voices are similar. I haven't seen him in almost 6 years, so I had no idea what he was up to. Never thought he'd be around here. He sighed, guessing his cousin might have come looking for a handout, knowing he ran a company. Stunned, Sherry listened as Tom asked if she had his cousin's contact information. She nodded and, with trembling hands, took out her phone to call Mike, Tom's cousin. Soon after, led by a staff member, an unsuspecting Mike arrived. Attempting to flee upon seeing Tom, Mike was forcibly caught by Tom, who shouted, "Don't run away. Is it true you got Sherry pregnant, Mike? Tell me what happened." Tom raised his voice unusually. Sherry murmured. So it really wasn't Tom. Under Tom's coercion, Mike began to recount the events. It started when Sherry, mistaking Mike for Tom while she was waiting for him, approached him. Despite feeling odd about him being in casual clothes, she thought it might just be an off day for him. It was understandable, given how similar Mike and Tom looked. Even I doubted I could distinguish Tom from Mike if they stood side by side. According to Mike, he came to ask Tom for money after hearing he had become a company president. When Sherry approached him while he was loitering near the company, being called Tom, he didn't take it in the sense of a familial relationship, but rather as if she was simply calling out to a nearby guy, thinking he was being hit on. Thus, under mutual misunderstanding, they ended up at a hotel and became intimate. Thinking she had secured a relationship with my husband, Sherry suggested they continue seeing each other. Mike, facing a certain issue, had to be cautious about her proposition and thus gave her his email address, saying, "It's better if you contact me here." This became the second trap that kept Sherry from realizing her mistake between Mike and Tom. Tom had given Sherry his phone number, while Mike gave her his email. Sherry had previously expressed a desire for Tom's email, which he had declined, saying it would be inconvenient if she contacted him without a serious reason. Thus, she believed the email exchange signified a closer relationship. After hearing Mike's story, Tom was again distraught. "I had no idea it had gotten this bad." Sherry, suspicious, asked, "What? Is there more?" "It's a shame it wasn't Tom, but since he's family, at least he'll take responsibility for the child, right?" He wouldn't dare shirk his responsibility, would he? With Tom unable to bring himself to say it, I decided to share what Tom had told me the night before. "Listen, Sherry. Yeah. Mike is married. That's why he gave you his email. A married man doesn't have many chances to answer his phone, right?" "What? Huh?" Sherry glared at Mike, who avoided her gaze, saying, "Sorry, I thought you were just into playing around. Never realized you mistook me for Tom. I had a feeling something was off in our conversations, but I never imagined you were pregnant. So what about me? What about the baby? I'd appreciate it if you didn't have the baby." His non-committal response made Mike chuckle awkwardly, infuriating Sherry. "Don't joke around. It's your child." At her outburst, I couldn't help but interject. "Mike is a terrible man, sure, but you're no better, Sherry. You lured him in, thinking he was my husband. You probably thought getting pregnant was a stroke of luck, didn't you? And now that you've found out he's someone else, you turn to blame the man? You're equally at fault for recklessly creating a child. You have no right to blame Mike. Both of you are to blame. Don't try to use the child as a tool to earn money for yourself. Save up for your cosmetic surgery or just give up on it with the face you have." I raised my voice, forgetting we were in a public place, relieved we had chosen a private room. But I had no choice. I felt like I couldn't earn enough on my own. Sherry retorted defiantly. "If you can't earn it yourself, then just give up. No matter how beautiful you look on the outside, it means nothing if your heart is ugly." Sherry seemed about to argue back, but couldn't come up with a good response, ultimately looking down silently. Mike, sheepishly, spoke up. Sherry. What if? I mean, if you decide to have the baby, I guess I don't have to acknowledge it, right? I doubt I can pay child support, considering I owe money to quite a few places." "Unbelievable." Sherry glared at Mike, slapping him in frustration, blaming him. However, she fell silent. "Whether I have the baby or not, I don't have the money. Kate, please help me." She began to cry. In my heart, I thought about what's best for the unborn child, considering if Sherry truly changed her ways, the child could have a happy life. However, I didn't appreciate her self-centered approach. I honestly shared my feelings. If you can truly reflect and think about the child's future, whether you decide to keep it or not, then I might be willing to help. Although I resented how Sherry had behaved, the unborn child was innocent in all this. My offer was not about forgiving my sister, but about helping the child. Sherry silently agreed after I made it clear this was about the child, not her. Later, Sherry decided she wanted to keep the baby, saying she felt a love for it when she saw the ultrasound. She expressed a desire to take responsibility and raise the child. I decided to lend her the necessary funds for childbirth and initial child care expenses. Mike, however, disappeared, unable to be held accountable. Sherry faced being disowned by our parents after explaining the situation, struggling as a single mother without much education. Despite hardships, including working in unsavory jobs and enduring abuse, Sherry persevered, taking medical administrative courses and repaying the money while raising her child alone. She vowed to devote herself to her child, forsaking relationships and marriage. It's remarkable how much she has changed, focusing on providing a stable life for her child without any rumors or distractions, even studying stocks and taking on side jobs. Meanwhile, My husband and I have been blessed with 2 children, managing to balance work and family life. Our daughter has become very popular at our company, possibly eyeing a future role in public relations. Sherry's transformation and dedication to her child have been profound, offering a glimmer of hope for reconciliation and a better future for her and her child. It's a testament to the power of change and the impact of unconditional love for one's child. It sounds like you've created a warm and nurturing environment for your children, allowing them the freedom to choose their own paths, whether that includes taking over the family business or pursuing their own dreams. It's wonderful that you're supportive of their interests, even if your son's current ambition is as unique as wanting to become a flying squirrel. Children's dreams are often vivid and imaginative, reflecting their pure and boundless potential. Who knows? Maybe by the time your son grows up, there will be a place for him in the company that aligns with his interests, or perhaps he'll find a completely different path that fulfills him. The strong sibling bond between your children is something to cherish, and it's great that they get along so well now. Maintaining that relationship as they grow older will surely bring them comfort and support, no matter where life takes them. As parents, showing your children the value of hard work, dedication, and the importance of family through your actions is incredibly powerful. The hope that one day they'll look back and see their parents as role models is a beautiful aspiration. It seems like you and your husband are well on your way to achieving that, balancing work and family life with grace and resilience.
Wendy, good job on enduring all this. He said he would take responsibility and marry because of it. Despite knowing that I was dating him and we were engaged, she brazenly stole him away. And when they told me about the pregnancy, I had no choice but to step back, didn't I? At that time, my fiancé had said he would take responsibility and marry me. But hearing that made me feel like I had fallen into hell in that instant. I truly believed in both him and Jessica. After marrying, Jessica continued to approach me. I don't even want to see her face anymore. But she keeps coming up with reasons to do so, which I can't handle. And then, an invitation to the wedding came. When I was stunned looking at the invitation, the couple, my eldest son and his wife, noticed and said something unexpected. "I'll go with my wife. We'll make a scene." Both of them nodded with confidence, so they must have some plan. On the wedding day, I saw a scene I could never have imagined. I am Wendy Clarkson, a nursery school teacher turning 50 this year. I live with my husband Dan. Dan and I have a son, Kevin, who recently got married. Kevin moved out of our house to live with his bride, Samantha, in the next town over, following their marriage. It seems they are enjoying living together, which as a parent makes me very happy. That's because I didn't have very good memories associated with marriage myself. In high school, I dated Aaron, a classmate. We quickly grew close after discovering we both liked a somewhat obscure band at the time. Afterward, I went to junior college to get my nursery school teacher certification. And he went to university, but we continued to date and even promised to marry. However, I failed to notice the dark shadow looming over our marriage plans. Hey, Wendy. Are you listening? Sorry. What? Geez. Just listen. The other day at work. She is Jessica Collins. Her demeanor changed suddenly after started working. I got hit on by a client the other day. It was so hard to say no. It's because you're cute, Jessica. How many times have you been hit on this year alone? I guess I've been asked out on dates by clients or business contacts about 30 times. Jessica's casual behavior felt like something out of a drama starring a famous actress. You're cute, Jessica. Be careful, okay? I know. You worry too much, Wendy. Since we continued to hang out and have coffee even after graduating high school, She knew about my dating life. Hey, how's your boyfriend? Ronnie is planning to marry me around the time he graduates from university. Oh, and he's supposed to become the president of his family's office supplies company. So he'll be working there as a president trainee after graduation. Then, I noticed a change in Jessica's expression. We were in the same class, but I had no idea he was a scion. I only found out recently too. He doesn't talk much about his family running a business. Then, Jessica looked over cautiously. He doesn't talk much about it, huh? He seemed inconspicuous, but you really can't judge a book by its cover. That's true. Isn't it amazing that he's promised a future as a president? I think I spoke without thinking to Jessica. If we ever have a wedding in the future, I'll invite you, so you have to come. Of course. I won't miss it. However, I had no idea that this chat with my best friend would turn into something unbelievable. I'll never forget it. It was half a year after I turned 21, on a rainy day. Amidst my busy schedule as a nursery school teacher after graduating from junior college, I continued to meet up with Jessica. As usual, Jessica invited me for coffee, and I sat at a window-side seat in a nearby cafe. Looking out the window, I saw a woman walking towards the cafe without an umbrella. It was unmistakably Jessica. Soaking wet, she entered the shop and walked towards me. What happened? Forgot your umbrella? If you had called, I would have come to pick you up. Then, Jessica looked at me with a face about to cry. You know, I have something I must tell you today. She hesitated as if unsure whether to speak. I'm pregnant. I knew Jessica was approached by many, but I didn't know she was dating someone specific. Really? When did you have someone you're marrying? Who? Do I know him? Then, Jessica nodded slowly, looking embarrassed. Someone you know. Well? Jessica swallowed hard before revealing something unbelievable. It's Aaron, your boyfriend. This happened. From there, my memory is hazy. The shock was so great that it seems my memory partially faded. So, that means... It seems the baby is a boy. Aaron and his parents are happy because he'll be the successor. Then, Jessica glanced at me, smirked, and said, Wendy, thanks for being calm about this. He said he would take responsibility and marry me. There's a baby in her belly, and Aaron's parents are on board. So, there's no role left for me. Jessica peered into my face and finally said this. For his sake, as well as for his parents and the company, you should think about how to conduct yourself. While saying this, she alternated her gaze between me and the cafe's door. Meaning, she was suggesting I leave quickly. Oh, and don't you dare contact Aaron. Why? Ronnie? This must be some mistake, right? Don't casually call him Ronnie. There's no mistake. Don't say anything unnecessary, or it won't end well. Jessica's face was scarier than I had ever seen. I had no idea she had this side to her. Of course, I won't contact him anymore. I never thought you would do something like this. Good luck with everything. Thanks. See you. Jessica drank her coffee as if nothing had happened. I had no more reason to speak with Jessica, only to leave. I was devastated for a while after being betrayed by the man I was promised to marry and my best friend. I remember feeling like everything was dark in front of me. I tried to visit him and Jessica several times, but I knew nothing would change if I did. During this lowest point, I met Dan, who was the same age as me, through a friend's introduction. Thanks to Dan, my emotional wounds gradually healed, and we got married when I was 24. Soon after, I got pregnant and gave birth to our son, Kevin. I was filled with life with someone I could trust completely. And I had almost forgotten about my previous boyfriend and Jessica. Around that time, I had Kevin and took maternity leave. I was unsure about returning to work. Nowadays, many people work. But I often hear that it's hard to spend quality time with children due to work. However, considering future uncertainties and Kevin's education expenses, working seemed the better option. I discussed my return to work with my superior, but we concluded that it would be difficult to work properly after my leave. Eventually, I asked the director and my colleagues, and was able to return to full-time work immediately after my maternity leave. It was hard leaving 0-year-old Kevin and returning to work, but it was for the future and just in case anything happened. At 5 p.m., when the children's parents come to pick them up, I mustered one last effort to send the children off at the nursery school, when I spotted a familiar person. That person was walking straight towards the nursery school. The moment I saw her face, I wished I hadn't, but it was too late. Yes, it was Jessica. Long time no see. Still working here, I see. She smirked, sizing me up from head to toe. I hadn't told Jessica about meeting Dan, getting married, and having a child. Out of a desire to never contact her again, I had cut off all communication. Yet, to think Jessica would approach me. Oh, thought we could reconcile? Don't get it twisted. I just happened to pass by here on my way to dinner with Aaron. I felt a slight discomfort with Jessica's words. Dinner? Wait, what about the child you were pregnant with? Is your husband coming later? My casual remark visibly shook Jessica. Huh? A child? Stop it. Just stop. Then, Jessica sat down on the spot, covering her ears. I wondered if I had said something terrible. Parents picking up their children were staring at us. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. Jessica seemed to be crying. She covered her face, but I could faintly hear her sniffling. The stares from the parents were quite painful. As a nursery school teacher, I've realized how scary rumors can be. A little slip of the tongue can spread among fellow teachers, parents, and even grandparents by the next day. Probably, they think I made some mother cry terribly. The thought gave me a headache. Just after returning from maternity leave, I didn't want any strange rumors making my job difficult. Regardless of my feelings, rumors spread rapidly. 3 days after meeting Jessica at the gate, over 90% of those associated with the nursery school were avoiding me. Jessica has always been personable and articulate, so most people took her word as the truth. Because of that, I endured painful glances for a while. I heard from a close colleague that I had been labeled as someone who had cornered a mother of a child at the nursery, to the point where she had no escape and made her cry. My colleague tried to clear my name with those around us, but the pace at which rumors spread was too fast. And with Jessica's convincing act of playing the victim, almost no one believed me. Because of the rumors Jessica spread, the nursery I had been working at before my pregnancy became an uncomfortable place for me, and I decided to resign. It seemed the nursery also found it troublesome to have a staff member around whom rumors circulated. When I announced my resignation, it was readily accepted. After resigning, I became fearful of working and secluded myself at home for a while. But I decided to start working again, for Kevin's sake. Although it was uncertain what path Kevin would choose in the future, I wanted to have enough money to support him in whatever he wished to pursue. Of course, there was a possibility that Jessica could suddenly reappear, spreading baseless rumors and causing trouble. However, I thought I couldn't let that stop me. I worked tirelessly, thinking only of Kevin's future. Dan understood how I felt and said he would do as much as he could, taking the initiative in doing household chores as well. Most people would say, "Don't you have your husband's salary?" but I just laughed those comments off. Though we did have Dan's salary, I felt it wasn't enough to secure Kevin's future. Fortunately, I loved my job as a nursery teacher, so I was able to work without problems at a new nursery. However, the thought of Jessica possibly passing by the nursery again sometimes made my heart heavy. I fought my own trauma and worked, managing to save a decent amount of money. Kevin grew up to be not only kind-hearted but also very studious, wanting to help those in distress. He aimed to become a doctor and successfully entered medical school. The tuition for medical school was higher than I had imagined, but it was all for Kevin's future. After undergoing numerous exams and training, Kevin became an obstetrician. He got a job at a well-respected obstetrics and gynecology hospital in the area, and dedicates his days to studying to become an even better doctor while providing care to many patients. About a year ago, Kevin married Samantha, whom he had been dating since high school. She is very calm and gentle, yet strong-willed and independent. I was pleased that he married such a wonderful woman. Kevin, who seemed so happy to finally start a family with the woman he loved since high school, occasionally visits the family home. One day, when Kevin and Samantha came to visit, they brought a letter with them. "Mom, this letter was in the post, but it's addressed to you, right?" The envelope they held appeared to be made of expensive paper. Curious, I took it, and an unwelcome name jumped out at me. My head started spinning as I saw the name indicating it was a letter from Jessica. "Mom, are you okay?" Yes, I'm fine." I couldn't let myself collapse and worry Kevin. I gathered my strength and opened the envelope. Inside were an invitation and a letter. It seemed Jessica was getting married, but the man she had snatched from me and married was about 30 years ago. Why would she be having a wedding now? As I wondered, Kevin and Samantha looked on curiously. "Oh, isn't this one of those trendy vow renewals?" Samantha, who works in the service industry at a restaurant, probably hears various stories. I knew she was knowledgeable about new information, but it made me realize she knew about worlds unknown to me. Vow renewal. What's that? It's like redoing your wedding. Some people do it on significant anniversaries, and it's become popular among celebrities. Because we couldn't have a proper wedding ceremony at the time. Interesting, I didn't know people did that. I felt disgusted looking at the invitation. How long would she continue to haunt my life? "Mom, you look a bit pale, are you sure you're okay?" "Yes. I'm fine. It's just, this person from a long time ago. It brings back painful memories." Samantha, sensing it was no trivial matter, asked me about it. "Is this Mrs. Collins?" It's not a big deal, but it hurts a bit to think about her. It's impossible for someone whose name makes you suffer to be not a big deal." "Oh, her name is Mrs. Collins." Samantha looked thoughtful upon seeing Jessica's name. Then, as if on cue, my phone began to ring. The screen displayed an unknown number. The timing, just as I was reminded of Jessica, gave me a bad feeling. Reluctantly, I answered after the persistent ringing. "Hello. Hi, it's Jessica. Did you get the invitation? You're coming, right?" Even without putting her on speaker, Jessica's shrill voice was clearly audible to Kevin and his wife. Seeing my pale face, Kevin gestured silently, asking who was on the phone. I pointed to the name on the envelope. Then, Kevin wrote something on a piece of paper and showed it to me. It read, "Say we'll go to the wedding." "Yes, I'll go." "I knew you'd say that. You want to see your old flame doing well as a company president, don't you?" After a series of smug boasts, the call ended. Kevin and Samantha exchanged looks and nodded. "My wife and I will take care of it." Samantha also nodded, pointing at the invitation with a smile. I'll make a scene. I had no idea what they planned to do, but it seemed Kevin and Samantha had their own strategy. I decided to leave it to them. On the day of the wedding, Kevin and Samantha attended as my representatives. The venue was famous, often featured on TV and commercials, so it looked familiar. The perfect wedding should be held on a hill overlooking the sea under the shimmering sun. A cheerful catchphrase that stuck in my mind. It was typical of Jessica to choose such a venue. Jessica always needed to be the center of attention, envied by others. So it was expected she'd pick a trendy venue. I had heard that hosting a wedding there could cost nearly $100,000, a favorite among celebrities. Looking up at the sparkling chandeliers and the high ceiling with a spiral staircase. It was obviously an expensive venue. I had a meeting with Samantha in advance. Dan, too, was curious about what a wedding redo in one's 50s would be like. So he ended up watching alongside me. It felt strange watching a small screen together. When the time comes, I'll make a video call so you can watch too, Mother. Samantha, dressed up for the occasion, whispered through the camera. Her usual warm smile was as lovely as ever, unchanged even today. I'm sorry to have you go to my place on your day off. And not at all. You always treat me so well. Besides, I thought there must be something serious for you to have such a reaction. Considering you never speak ill of others. Samantha's keen perception was evident, likely honed from her experience in customer service. I'll keep the video call going from here on, so please watch, Mother. Perhaps sensing something unpleasant, Dan said. I'm going out to buy cigarettes, and left abruptly. Kevin and his wife must have suspected something to show me via video call. Dan has always been perceptive, but his intuition here was impressive. Then, a memory video of Jessica and my ex-boyfriend began. It covered their meeting through a friend. How they quickly had a child together but couldn't keep it for some reason. And how, after a long time, they were finally expecting again. The video mentioned their current happiness, with their child now in middle school and doing well. The child, about to graduate from middle school, was portrayed as energetic. Exceptionally bright, with many friends, leading a fulfilling life. The video and its content were clearly visible to me through Samantha's video call, leaving me wondering what would happen next. As the host was about to conclude with moving words, Samantha seemed to stand up. The view on the other side of the screen changed dramatically. What a truly wonderful married life you have, and such a fantastic son. You must be from Wendy's family. Yes, that's correct. I'm here on behalf of my mother-in-law, with my husband, Kevin. Kevin appeared briefly at the edge of the camera, giving a small nod. It was impossible to guess what would unfold next. Samantha then began to speak astonishing words. Such a wonderful son, achieving high grades through your tutoring. But shouldn't there be something else he needs to do first? What? What are you suddenly talking about, thought. Jessica looked around frantically, but while the crowd whispered curiously, no one spoke up. Amid the growing buzz in the venue, not just because Samantha's voice carried well, but also because there seemed to be another reason for the disturbance. I work in a restaurant, and I've really had a hard time with your son's behavior. Not teaching him proper manners or common sense. I always thought it was such a pity. Jessica's face turned red upon hearing Samantha's words. Manners and common sense? Of course, I've taught him. What are you implying? Stuffing unfinished food into the corners of the seat. Putting his mouth directly on the condiment bottles. Is it normal for a middle schooler to do such things? It's fine to have fun with friends, but stop making baseless accusations. My child would never do such things. Samantha was not intimidated. Are you absolutely certain your child wouldn't do such a thing? After all, you just introduced him as your wonderful son. Recently, he took all the toilet paper from the restroom, which caused quite a hassle. Samantha chuckled, but her eyes were not smiling. Convinced that Jessica would never admit to it, Samantha grabbed a tablet. It seems you've never seen how your child behaves outside. Here's some footage from a security camera. From the tablet, audio played of what seemed to be Jessica's son and his friends messing around, apparently trying to chug a bottle of soy sauce. After this, it was quite the ordeal. We had to close the shop and disinfect everything. Middle schoolers should know right from wrong, yet chugging sauce seemed fine to him. Jessica's son wasn't at the wedding, but it was clear he was incredibly inconsiderate and hard to communicate with. That audio is fabricated. Stop making things up. There's clearer footage showing his face. Shall I play it here? Realizing Samantha was serious, Jessica fell silent. Well, there's no need to show you here. I've submitted these videos and photos to someone who needs them. What? What do you mean by that? Your son, he's finished his high school entrance exams and chosen a school, right? It was easy to find out since he talked loudly about it at the shop. Jessica's face went pale in an instant. I mentioned it to the school's administration. They said such behavior is unfit for their institution, and some sort of action will likely be taken. You might be getting a call soon. What? Are you threatening me? Stop it right now. Well, you'll find out soon enough. Maybe you should ask your son for more details. Then, Kevin stood up. Earlier, you mentioned having a pregnancy that didn't lead to birth when you were quite young. It seems that was a long time ago. Jessica looked at Kevin and nodded. Yes, that's right. At 20, I went through a tough pregnancy and couldn't meet my baby. I'd rather not talk about it, it's painful. Kevin noticed her voice getting softer. Strange, there's no record of you being pregnant at that time. What are you talking about? The venue buzzed with whispers growing louder. People were saying there was never a child to begin with. I had a feeling something was off. Conversations like these could be heard clearly. You've been visiting a gynecologist for several years due to some issues, haven't you? According to your medical records, there's no indication you were ever pregnant. How peculiar. The crowd began openly criticizing and denouncing Jessica. I've heard that you chose to marry the man my mother was dating. I've heard it from somewhere. Jessica seemed displeased with Kevin's remark and shouted as if to ignore him. Don't bother with such nonsense. Security, please, remove this person at once. However, no one made a move. Instead, the voices criticizing Jessica grew louder. The attendees whispered among themselves. She married him on the pretext of being pregnant, but was that all a lie? So, the claim of having an heir was also false? It doesn't matter to me whom you marry. However, using pregnancy as a reason to steal someone away really makes me question your character. Like son, like parent, it seems. A son who takes toilet paper and a parent who takes someone's boyfriend. You're very much alike. Samantha kept the video call going, allowing us to see Jessica shaking as she faced Kevin and Samantha. The wedding was no longer the focus. Some guests were uploading videos to social media in real time, with comments like, "I got a comment. There's a reaction. It's hilarious how many people are watching this." The buzz was especially loud around them. The video uploaded to social media is buzzing with comments about Jessica's pitiable state. The murmurs grew louder, and the looks directed at Jessica became increasingly icy. At a table of her former classmates, people began loudly throwing sarcastic remarks her way. People always said she had a thing for men. I always thought she was bad news. Thinking she could do anything just because she's pretty and then growing up to be this pathetic. Such comments could be heard from all around. Eventually, the wedding turned into a massive expose of Jessica's misdeeds. People freely shared stories about just how awful a person she was, turning the event from a wedding into a chaotic mess. Aaron watched Jessica being condemned, looking bewildered but didn't say anything to his wife, treating it almost like it didn't concern him. It was as if he was carefully avoiding touching a sore spot, a strange distance between them. Normally, one would expect some sort of action in defense of his wife. But Aaron seemed to be pretending to be an outsider. It reminded me of when we were dating. He always had this demeanor, a strange nostalgia. Samantha kept the video call going, occasionally focusing the camera on Jessica's frustrated expression. Watching her make such a face, I realized she could look like that, too. Soon, people gathered around. It seemed many had suffered due to Jessica's actions and behaviors, sharing stories like, that one time when she didn't return borrowed money, spread weird rumors, or even made people eat expired snacks. The wedding was anything but a wedding anymore, with people speaking their minds freely. What? Do all of you want to ruin my party? People sitting at Jessica's side of the friends' tables left with uncomfortable expressions. It appeared they had been reluctantly invited by Jessica. That's why I didn't want to come. But she insisted, and now look what's happened. Voices could be heard over the video call. People continuously left the venue, leaving only a few in the family and friends sections. Then, Samantha spoke to me through the phone screen. It looks like the party is wrapping up. The staff seem to be heading this way. I thought so. From here, it looks like the seats are almost empty. Did you notice? It's hard to believe there were that many people here just a moment ago. Oh, it looks like they're talking to the staff. Saying that, Samantha adjusted the phone's angle. The camera shifted, showing Jessica, Aaron, and a venue staff member. Aaron, once chosen over me by Jessica, was a man I could never forget. No matter how much time passed. We had promised to marry, and during our relationship, I genuinely believed there was no man as wonderful as him. Both his appearance and personality seemed perfect, and I was completely smitten. But now, there's no trace of the man I once admired. He's probably twice his old weight by now, visibly heavier, and with thinning hair. I had heard he took over his father's company. But his current appearance screamed of poor self-management. Aaron seems to be discussing something. Look. The phone screen zoomed in on Aaron and the venue staff having a discussion. What are they doing? It looks like most people have already left the wedding. Suddenly, the screen focused closely on Aaron. He appeared to be prostrating himself, with only the back of his head visible. And all that could be heard was his voice profusely apologizing about the payment for this ceremony. Could be heard, indicating a dispute over payment. From what I heard from people leaving just now, Aaron's company is on the verge of bankruptcy, and he's borrowed money from all over the place. Is that so? But I saw their advertisements downtown not long ago. I wouldn't have guessed they were struggling financially. It seems all the money went into Jessica's extravagances and their child's tutoring fees. It's a shame, all that investment, and the child still ends up causing trouble in shops. Guests who were taken aback by hearing about Jessica's past actions seemed to have been looking down. But they quickly stood up and hurried silently towards the exit. They probably did so fearing what Jessica might say to them if they were caught. A wedding scattering into disarray before the official conclusion is quite an unusual sight. Struck by a sudden idea, I asked Samantha for a favor. I'm sorry to ask, but could you turn the camera towards that person prostrating? I have something I want to say to him. Yes, I understand. After explaining the situation to the venue staff, Samantha handed the phone to Aaron. I found myself looking directly at Aaron through the screen. It's been a while. Wendy. It really is Wendy. What have I done? As he spoke, Aaron turned his eyes away from the phone. I was only married to Jessica because she said she was pregnant. I actually wanted to marry you, Wendy. Do you remember our promise? It's not too late, is it? To think you'd start with that. Married because you were made to? You chose this yourself. And you were fooled by such a transparent lie. Did you think I'd feel sorry for you? Aaron stood there, a look of shock on his face. Do you see yourself as a victim? Fooled, you say? Cheating willingly and then using being deceived as an excuse doesn't make any sense, does it? You're as straightforward as ever. That's what I loved about you. I felt a chill. Aaron had always been the type to try to maintain his status as a victim, failing miserably in his attempts to be cunning. Still living in the past? This so-called party, or wedding? This isn't even a real wedding redo. How long will you be bound by the past? But you loved me enough to want to marry me, didn't you? Could you lend me some money? What era are you talking about? Well, you should probably start thinking about your future. I'm not lending you any money. I ended the call with that. Aaron, on the other end, was probably in shock, knowing his character. But that's no concern of mine. After the wedding, Jessica had to start working due to the deferred payment and their inability to manage their living expenses. However, Jessica, who had never really worked, struggled to adapt. Despite her high pride, she constantly complained. She seemed to job hop without ever being of much use, according to the rumors I frequently heard. I heard from an acquaintance that their prideful child's high school admission was revoked. The video of his misconduct had spread, causing an uproar not just in the school he was supposed to attend but also online, which was inevitable. Moreover, Aaron's company seemed to be failing, and every time I passed by, the gloominess around it was more noticeable. It was a case of misfortunes piling up, making me think how troubles come in threes, albeit from an outsider's perspective. At this time, Jessica started working as a cleaner at the nursery school where I work. Wearing a uniform with the cleaning company's name printed on it, she stood with a sullen face. I disliked even mentioning Jessica's name, deciding to treat her as a stranger. You're the new cleaner starting today, right? Huh? What's with that act? Because of you, I've been through hell. I ignored her provocation and simply stated a fact. I am in charge of the cleaning contractors here. If your work attitude is significantly poor, I will contact the cleaning company. Jessica, realizing the seriousness, closed her mouth, but then loudly made an outrageous claim. I know you're trying to ruin my life, blaming me for stealing your old fiancé and taking it out on me. As she spoke, she threw the broom she was holding. The moment I saw that, I called the cleaning company, and they informed me she would be fired. It seemed her reputation and cleaning skills were so bad that one more complaint without any sign of remorse would lead to immediate termination. Given her behavior, it was likely the same everywhere. Beyond being appalled, I even felt sorry for her. I continue to work at the nursery school. Since that incident, Jessica has stopped bothering me, and I've been living peacefully. Dan helps out with household chores when I'm busy with work, which has been a huge relief. Recently, his cooking skills have improved, making mealtimes even more enjoyable. Then came an exciting call from Kevin. Mom? Can I talk to you for a sec? What is it? You sound happy. Can you tell? Samantha is pregnant. We might have a baby by the end of the year. I was enveloped in indescribable joy. Really? What wonderful news. I was so happy, I had to tell you first. I'm truly happy. Samantha must be experiencing morning sickness around this time. I don't want to trouble her by talking now, so let's celebrate when she feels better. The thought of a baby being born into Kevin's family filled me with excitement. Despite the heartache of having my fiancé stolen by a friend in my youth and nearly giving up on everything, I now live surrounded by wonderful people. This has become my motivation to keep moving forward. Vanessa, get out of here. As soon as my sister entered my room, she suddenly said, "What do you mean? I don't understand. You really are clueless. You're such a burden. That's why I'm telling you to leave this house and live somewhere else." That's right. Anyone who's not family should leave. My sister and niece said this together, grinning and laughing at each other. This is my house, so I'm not leaving. You should be the one to leave, sis. I retorted, angered, but it was as if they weren't listening. I'm going to use your room, so get out. Granny, you're welcome to live in the garden. Get out. I drove the two of them out of my room and locked the door. You know it's pointless to be locked in your room. That's right, that's right. We'll come every day until you leave. True to their word, from that day on, my sister and niece came to my living area several times a day, repeating their calls for me to leave. Frustrated, I ended up selling the house. My name is Vanessa Adams. 25 years old. I work as a programmer, a remote worker. Although my job is mostly at home, I sometimes go out for work. There are some tasks that cannot be handled by working from home. However, basically, my home is my workplace. I currently live with my parents, but I have an older sister, Maria, who is 3 years older. Since childhood, my sister has had a charming appearance that makes it impossible not to love her at first sight. However, because she was always popular, she had quite a love life. In middle school, she barely attended school, and upon graduating, she moved in with her boyfriend at the time. Still unmarried, she gave birth to a girl at the age of 16. They did get married officially after that, but divorced 5 years later. She returned to our parents' home with her daughter. The reason for the divorce was my sister's infidelity. She could never settle for just one man, and apparently had affairs with multiple men behind her husband's back. At the time, I was still in middle to high school and grew to despise my sister. It makes sense. From a sensitive age in upper elementary school, I had witnessed her careless way of living. The concept of love felt tainted to me, and I was determined never to become like her. Even after that, my sister continued to move in and out of our parents' home, changing partners frequently. I lost track of how many there have been, but she is currently pregnant with her 5th child. She is at least officially married to the current partner. So for now, the father of the child seems to be confirmed. Though the actual situation might be unclear, at least legally, that's the case. My parents have always been at their wits' end with my sister, but seem unable to do anything about it. Every time she caused trouble, they only fretted. I was frustrated with my parents as well, but after all, parents are parents, I couldn't abandon them. So, I still live with them. My father has retired, and my mother was a stay-at-home wife. I support the household financially. Fortunately, I've been able to earn a decent income thanks to skills I acquired during my student days. I contribute to my family financially, but it seems they secretly pass it on to my sister. I think it's their right to use the money I give them as they wish. But it frustrates me to think that my sister might be wasting it carelessly, almost as if throwing it away on the street. From the moment I became aware of my surroundings, my sister was treated like a queen. My parents let her do as she pleased while disciplining me strictly. I heard that shortly after I was born, my paternal grandmother passed away. She had doted on my sister as her first grandchild, especially because of her adorable appearance. As a result, my sister became unbearably spoiled and uncontrollable. So my parents decided to be strict with me, at least. But that was their choice, something a young child like me couldn't understand. I always wondered why I was the only one being scolded, even though my sister was doing as she pleased. That's how I felt all my life. Looking back, I'm grateful I didn't end up like my sister, but still, there's a lingering resentment towards my parents. Despite the mixed feelings, I deeply care for my parents, they're irreplaceable. That's why we're still living together. My sister knows this and exploits my parents, bringing her children over to dote on them and then leaving. Watching this, I feel frustrated but keep quiet to avoid trouble, pretending not to see. I realize that tolerating my sister's selfish behavior might be enabling her. But I've always thought it best to avoid stirring things up, keeping to the mantra, let sleeping dogs lie. Then, a minor incident occurred one day. A major storm caused significant damage to our house. It was an old house, over 50 years old, originally belonging to my father's family. The damage was so severe that repairs were unavoidable, though it had been manageable up until then. The cost estimate for the repairs was unexpectedly high. The house was falling apart in many places, and fixing one area would likely lead to problems in another, a never-ending cycle. What if we just rebuild it? I suggested this to my parents. They were surprised but also pleased, saying they'd agree if I was okay with it. After all, I would be the one paying, so they had no complaints. Considering the future, I want to make it a two-family home. My parents happily agreed, thinking it would be best for when I eventually marry. Even though I have no boyfriend and no plans for marriage, my real intention was to have a place for my sister and her family to stay without imposing on my parents' living space. Apart from the oldest niece, all of my sister's children are boys. It's possible they all have different fathers. She was involved with various men at the time. My niece, Piper, is older because my sister's first marriage lasted 5 years. I've heard her say she endured it because she wasn't used to divorce yet. I mean, if I wanted to go out somewhere, who's going to take care of the kids? Who I'm meeting, when will I return? He was just so annoyingly nosy. Though I think it's reasonable to be asked those questions, my sister's first husband was a decent, well-employed person and considerably older, which made me wonder why she chose him. He had a good, stable income, and I thought I could control him, so I married him. But all he did was nag about housework and childcare. So annoying. It seems miraculous that she stayed married to him for 5 years, considering her attitude. However, it's possible the marriage lasted only because of her first husband's patience, as she was involved with various men even then. Eventually, the husband couldn't take it anymore and they divorced. You'd think she'd have to pay compensation, but strangely, he didn't ask for any. Perhaps he realized there was no point in fighting with my sister. It's unfortunate, but choosing her as a partner was his decision. While I sympathize, I can't help but think it's his own fault for not seeing through her. After ending her first marriage, my sister literally went through men like changing clothes, giving birth to 4 more children with different men every year. All boys, ages 6, 5, and 4. The father is supposedly the second husband she married, but who really knows what the truth is? With each childbirth, my sister would come home, causing our parents to fuss over the whole family. It was incredibly irritating and disruptive to my work. And then, my parents would expect my help, which is why I thought of building a 2-family home. During the reconstruction of our house, my sister was unusually quiet. Maybe one of her many husbands was handling her well. Or it was just because she had recently given birth to her youngest son. I'm not sure. Maybe it was because there was no house to return to, which might explain the peace. Whatever the reason, it was quiet, allowing the construction to finish smoothly. The first floor of the new house is for my parents' household. I made it a bit larger, anticipating my sister's family would intrude. The living dining room has a large table so everyone can sit and eat together. There's a bedroom for my parents, 2 guest rooms, an automatic bath that can be used 24 hours, and of course, the kitchen has a dishwasher. During the designing phase, the architect praised me for being such a filial daughter, going to such lengths for my parents. But the truth is, if I didn't do this, my sister's family would disrupt my life. That's my real motive. There's a door between the first and second floors, usually locked, allowing us to live separately but securely communicate via monitor-equipped intercom. Life in the new home has started. It was truly comfortable. I often eat dinner with my parents in their household, but mornings and afternoons are separate. It feels like I've gained freedom for the first time. A month into our new life, a different kind of storm hit. I'm so done with that man, I'm breaking up with him. She declared her intention to divorce and moved into my parents' household. The cause? Her infidelity, again. It's more accurate to say she was kicked out rather than she left. How many times has it been? Truly incorrigible. And can you believe it? He's asking for compensation. Apparently, a paternity test revealed her youngest son wasn't his. It's understandable that he'd want compensation. Yet my sister was fuming as if she was the one wronged. And he won't acknowledge the kid as his own. He's filing some paperwork to declare the child as someone else's. She's likely talking about a disavowal of paternity. If the child remains legally his, it could lead to complications later. It seems a logical step to take. Such a narrow-minded man. Good riddance, I'm better off without him. I feel so relieved to be free. My sister says this with a clear conscience, seemingly oblivious to the irony. I'm not going to pay any compensation, and I'll even make him pay child support. Thinking it's impossible, but feeling free to think so. From that day, the life of 8 people began in the parental household. My parents, my sister, and her 5 children. I was genuinely glad I had made it a 2-family home. However, about a month after my sister moved back, her family started invading my space. I'd prefer if you didn't come in while I'm working. When I told my sister this, she replied, "You can't expect little kids to understand that. You'd know if you had kids of your own." Far from stopping them, she practically chased her children into my living area. The most troublesome was my 12-year-old niece, Piper. She would take clothes from my closet whenever I was away, regardless of what I said. No matter how much I complained, it never stopped. Of course, telling my sister was futile. If anything, she blamed me for not giving her adorable niece anything. Now, my parents have left the door between our households unlocked, silently allowing my sister's family free reign over my room. I protested to my parents, but all they did was apologize, unable to offer any real solution. It disrupted my work and my peace. As I was trying to figure out what to do, my sister and niece made an outrageous demand. "Hey, why don't you just move out?" She barged into my room and said that out of the blue. "What do you mean all of a sudden?" "I don't understand." "Why can't you understand?" "You're in the way. That's why I'm telling you to get out of this house and live somewhere else." Yeah. People who aren't family should leave." My sister and niece laughed and said this together. "This is my house, so I'm not leaving." "You should be the one to leave, sis." I retorted, but they weren't listening. "I'm going to use your room, so get out." "Granny, go live in the garden." "Get out." I drove them out of my room and locked the door. "You know it's useless to do that." Right. We'll come every day until you leave." True to their words, they started coming to my living area multiple times a day from that day on, repeating their demands for me to leave. I complained to my parents again, but all they said was sorry. Unspoken was their wish that, if my sister's family would quiet down even a bit, it would be better if I just left. Oh, I see. I felt something click inside me. Enough. There's not a single ally for me in this house. Fine, I get it. With that, I turned my back on my parents and went back to my room. I wouldn't let them have their way. But I had no more attachment to this house. I ignored my daily visiting sister and niece and started preparing for what was to come. 10 days later, I packed my things and decided to leave the house. I'm leaving, but just so you know, I won't be involved in anything after this. Hearing this, my sister and Piper high-fived triumphantly. Don't care. Now we can live comfortably with just our family. Good riddance to bad rubbish. Thank you for everything. I said this to my parents. Both of them looked troubled. But there seemed to be a sense of relief somewhere in their expressions. It had been like this since we were children. My sister would be selfish, cry, and throw tantrums, and I would endure it. Then, my parents would look relieved and say they were sorry for making me endure. But that was all they would do. Just words, nothing more. Remembering this filled me with frustration and emptiness. I couldn't believe that even in the face of such a significant issue, my parents' attitudes remained the same. It confirmed that my decision was correct. I couldn't help but laugh. I decided to cut ties not only with my sister but also with my parents. I had always thought there was a debt of gratitude for raising me, that they were my parents by blood. But now, I think blood ties mean nothing. Everyone in this house is related to me by blood, yet not a single one is on my side. I left the house keys on the table and walked out alone. For the time being, I will live in a short-stay apartment. There's a lot I need to do. My work has fallen behind because of them. From here, I'll rebuild my life and walk towards a new future. A week after I moved into the short-stay apartment, my smartphone rang loudly in the middle of the night. It was from my family's home phone number, but when I answered, it was my sister's voice. She was yelling about something, but I couldn't understand what she was saying. Holding the phone slightly away from my ear, I realized I didn't even know my sister's phone number. When I remained silent, her voice eventually faded. Perhaps she tired herself out from all the yelling. Finally, it seemed like we could talk. Hey, what's up? What's up? Are you kidding me? What's this all about? I had a pretty good idea of what she wanted to say. Today, the real estate agent told us the house has been put up for sale. Yes, that makes sense. I listed it for sale recently. So I figured it would happen soon. How dare you do something like that without my permission? This is a joke. Cancel it right now. The joke was on her. Why would she think she needed to give her permission to sell that house? My sister had no rights to that house. I decided to explain it to her. That house was originally mine. I built it with my money, in my name. So, it's my business what I do with it, get it? You're joking. That's not funny. It's not a lie. Why don't you check with Mom and Dad? After a moment of thought, she said. Even if that's true, the land belongs to Mom and Dad, right? I bought that too. So, the land is also in my name. When the house was rebuilt, I paid half of the land's price in cash to my parents. The price was halved because the land's heirs were supposed to be my sister and me. Perhaps my parents thought they would eventually leave it all to my sister. However, the situation changed when I decided to build a house there. The land was supposed to be partly mine to inherit. So, I paid for my sister's share and took full ownership. I did this to prevent my sister from later claiming she had rights and moving in. It was a precaution. I simply told my sister that I had bought the land from our parents in cash. And it was now in my name. She kept screaming it was a lie. But I told her to check the registry if she couldn't believe it and hung up. By now, my parents are probably being berated by my sister. But that's not my problem. I merely stated the facts. What they do with that information is up to my parents and my sister. As for the house, that's enough for now. Sure enough, it won't be long before my sister calls again to complain about another issue. As expected, I received another call from my family's home number 3 days later. It was indeed my sister, ranting furiously as before. I decided to wait in silence until she quieted down a bit. Speaking up in such situations only leads to loss. Hello, do you need something? Do I need something? What are you talking about? The exchange was exactly the same as last time. It felt like déjà vu. What do you mean? If it's about the house, I believe I explained that already. It's not about the house. What did you tell my ex-husbands? So, it was about that. But, notably, she said husbands rather than a husband, which explains everything. I don't think I said anything particularly odd. Lies, all lies. Why does my sister always accuse me of lying? Because of you, they're saying they won't pay child support. Well, I guess nobody wants to pay child support for a child that isn't theirs. Mind your own business. Mind my own business. Maybe she's right. But I did reach out to the men purported to be the fathers of my sister's children, merely wanting to get back at her for trying to take the house I had painstakingly built as my final home. A bit of payback seems fair, doesn't it? First, I contacted my sister's first husband, the father of my niece, to inform him about my sister bringing my niece and nephews to my house because they apparently had nowhere else to live. I wondered aloud whether living with their father might not make them happier. According to my sister's first husband, he's remarried and has a new family now. He hasn't seen Piper since the divorce from my sister, and only wants to maintain a relationship through child support payments. So, I reassured him with relief in my voice. That's good, paying child support means your daughter is indeed yours. He seemed confused by what I meant, so I added, somewhat flustered. Well, the reason she was kicked out this time was because the child born wasn't her husband's, so I just thought. I ended the call saying he shouldn't worry about it, it's none of his concern. It seems that he told my sister if the niece isn't his child, he would stop the child support payments and demand repayment for what he's already paid until a DNA test confirms paternity. For now, he's halting all payments. If the child is indeed his, he'll resume the payments, so there should be no problem. Next, I called my sister's second husband, the legal father of the 3 older nephews, conveying that since my sister's family had come to my place, perhaps the children would be better off living with their biological father. I included the reason for my sister's latest divorce, and suggested that if the 3 boys were indeed his children, they'd be better off with him than with a mother like her. The result was the same. The second husband stated he wouldn't pay child support if the children weren't his. If they were, he'd take custody. Either way, the child support payments my sister relied on would stop. This seemed to be her biggest concern. After all, the child support for 3 children amounted to a significant sum. In that case, my sister wouldn't need to raise 3 children. But she would also lose access to all kinds of support payments, allowances, and subsidies related to children that she could receive from the government along with child support. If the children were not my sister's second husband's, She could still receive the other support payments, but the child support would drop to zero. Either way, it was a tight spot for her. My sister mainly complained about this to me. If I stop getting money, I'll make you pay me back. She said that, but I have no obligation to reimburse her. My concern was purely for the welfare of my niece and nephews, who would be without a home, so I reached out to their supposed fathers. It was out of affection. I even contacted my sister's third husband, who had recently served her with divorce papers, to see if there was any way he could reconcile with my sister, considering her plight. Of course, he immediately refused. Moreover, he said that the divorce papers hadn't been filed yet, and urged me to get my sister to sign and return them as soon as possible. I also reached out to several men who were clearly involved with my sister, telling them she had moved in and was in trouble, asking if they could help in any way. But it seems they've all gone incommunicado. They probably wanted to avoid getting entangled in her issues. If it turns out that any of my sister's children are theirs, they might end up having to pay child support, or even face compensation claims from former husbands. I would also decide to run in that situation. Everything is a mess because of you. You have to compensate me. She continued to insist, but of course, I had no intention of doing so. Have you made any progress with the moving preparations? Huh? The real estate agent must have told you to vacate, right? I heard there might be a buyer interested, so they contacted me too. It's true. The house being new and custom built had attracted several inquiries. The location was quite favorable. It wasn't very close to the station, but a major highway was nearby, offering good bus services late into the night and decent access to the station front. That's why I had wanted to continue living in that house. It would have been convenient for moving around even as I got older. Hospitals were also close by. Above all, I considered my parents' situation. Before I would age, they would definitely grow older and weaker. But they chose my sister over me, so she can take care of them from now on. That's why you better find a new place soon. Otherwise, you'll end up homeless. You need to do something. I've been kicked out and have to find a place for myself. Good luck with your search.
Bye.
I said what I wanted and turned off my phone. I can't block them yet, as I need to see how this unfolds. But once it's all over, I'll cancel this phone line. Soon after, a buyer was found for the house. The real estate agent managed to evict my parents and my sister's family, seemingly by offering a small amount for relocation, and threatening legal action if they refused to leave. Surprisingly, the paternity tests confirmed that the eldest daughter was the child of my sister's first husband, and the 3 boys were indeed the children of the second husband. Under normal circumstances, this would not be surprising. But with my sister, even this was unexpected. Fortunately, the eldest daughter will continue to receive child support, but the 3 nephews will be taken by their father. At least that was a good outcome. Now, my parents, sister, eldest daughter, and the youngest child live in a small apartment. My sister tried to contact various men she had been involved with for child support for the youngest. But unsurprisingly, she couldn't reach anyone, thwarting her plans. Somewhere out there, there must be the real fathers of my sister's children. But she herself has no idea who they might be, leaving the situation without a solution. From the third husband, she has been continually pursued for compensation. And reluctantly, my sister has had to start working. She was caught after trying to evade payments, and was told she had to work and pay back little by little, or face legal action if she continued to refuse. Just like when she was forced to leave our house, when faced with legal threats. Even my sister seems to back down, and now she quietly continues to work. After leaving middle school, getting pregnant, and marrying my sister, who had always depended on others, for the first time had to work. It's uncertain how long this will last, but I hope she can at least try her best. Perhaps because my sister has calmed down, my niece, who used to be a spitting image of her mother in selfishness and willfulness, has started to take care of her younger brother. When they were moving to their current apartment, she didn't want to live in such a cramped space and asked to live with her father instead. When he refused, she came back dejected. Perhaps the realization that there's nowhere else to go if they were evicted from here has made her start helping around the house and attending school diligently. My niece is still in middle school. It's not too late for her to choose a different path from her mother and live a serious life. The reason I know about what happened to them afterward is that my mother called once, asking for financial help. I asked what kind of assistance she meant, and she said general living expenses, which made me chuckle involuntarily. It seems they've completely forgotten what led to this situation and want me to support them again. Dad and Mom are still young. If both of you work even a little, you should be able to manage your living expenses. I declined with that response. My sister got married right after middle school and didn't pursue further education, so I wasn't given any financial support for high school onwards. Fortunately, I had good grades and managed to attend higher education through scholarships. But I didn't receive a dime from my parents after that. I had to work part-time jobs for my other needs, and even contributed to the household from my earnings. So, if they had been living a normal life, they should have been able to save some money. My father worked for a standard company, and if they hadn't wasted their money, they shouldn't be short of retirement savings. After graduating college, I began contributing even more to the household, eventually covering all living expenses. At that time, I thought it was normal for children to support their parents. So despite my frustrations, I continued living with them. My mother did cook and clean, which was helpful. And I guess I was also taking advantage of that situation. I felt like as long as I provided money, everything else was fine. Looking back, I think I was in a codependent relationship with my parents. I never spoke up about my sister, fearing my parents would abandon me and choose her over me. I was afraid of being left alone, which kept me silent. Taking a significant step to buy and then sell the house made me feel freed from these chains. I've always felt overshadowed by my sister, holding on to a hope that my parents would someday pay attention to me. It might sound cold, but my parents are still capable of taking care of themselves. If they truly find themselves in dire straits, I'm willing to help, but not yet. Helping now would only revert things to how they were, likely leading me to support my sister again, and she would probably quit her job. That could influence my niece to follow in her mother's footsteps, given how much they resemble each other. Now, for the first time, I feel free. Going forward, I'll focus solely on my happiness. Fortunately, I have a skill to rely on. I have economic independence, unlike my sister, who was always called cute. I've always thought my appearance was ordinary, which might be why my parents favored her. I ridiculed my sister for being a hopeless person while also harboring a complex about it. Now, I can admit to that. It's said that letting go of something makes room for something new, and I believe it's true. As I search online for a new place to live, I'm fully embracing my freedom. I want to experience love and hopefully marriage. Finding someone to love and showing them off is my primary goal now.